Hello there, fellow model makers, and welcome to my Tamiya 1/35th scale Matilda Mark 3/4 build. Now then, the Matilda was an infantry tank. Being an infantry tank, it was meant to support the foot soldier, and so it was rather slow. But in the early years of the war, the Matilda was the supreme tank on the battlefield. With a thick armor that the Germans could not penetrate and a 2-pounder main gun that could take out any enemy tank. It was because of this dominance that the Matilda was soon being called the Queen of the Desert, and by the Germans no less. Anyway, history lesson over. Let's take a look at the kit. The box art is fairly decent, pretty standard Tamiya stuff. The sides of the box have a few more coloring options, but we will be going with the scheme on top of the box. We will try our hand at making the Phantom. Inside the box, you have reasonable amount of plastic, but the first thing that pops out at you are these rubber tracks. The top hull comes in its own separate bag. The next sprue has the figures and some skirting. The third bag contains two identical sprues with the tracks, suspension arms and the wheels on them. And this last sprue has the hull and turret on it. There's a small decal sheet with marking options on it. The instructions are in a black and white booklet form. The instructions appear to be fairly clear, and the illustrations on the face of it look to be crisp and clear. There are three paint scheme options: 42nd Royal Tank Regiment, 1st Army Tank Brigade in North Africa in 1941, the 32nd Army Tank Brigade in Libya in 1941, and the last option being the 49th Royal Tank Regiment, 35th Army Tank Brigade stationed in England in 1942. We will be going for the first option. This kit is relatively new, a 2009 production. The parts are crisp and nicely detailed. There is no visible flash or poorly placed injection pin marks on the kit. It appears to be a really nicely detailed work of engineering. There are two track options. One can either go with the standard Tamiya rubber track or go the long route with the Link and Link tracks. Since there is little difference in the detailing of the tracks, I think I will go with the rubber tracks. Anyway, time to get on with the build. The first few steps involve getting the main hull together, starting with this lower front piece. The tabs where the kit piece joins the sprue gate are very intelligently placed on this kit, something I have not seen earlier. The joint is so placed that it does not interfere with the visible surface. This is an excellent feature, and I guess Tamiya need to be congratulated for this. The kit is very nicely molded and the pieces fit together easily. I don't see too much puttying and sanding in the future, unless I goof up, a very real possibility. Right, time to start gluing together the road wheels. They go on together easily, an A and B assembly line. The only thing I try to be careful about is that I try and line up the tab marks on both parts at the same place. This makes sanding them off easier as one can sand both marks in one go. The idler wheel assembly is next. Once again, fairly easy. Just remember to insert this polycap in the middle and try not to get any glue on it. Next, the drive sprocket. Looking at how the pieces are joined to the sprue, I decided to simply cut them off with my hobby knife. This assembly too has a polycap in the middle. I have cut and cleaned all the parts that make up the hull. Despite it appearing to be a rather complex build, in reality, the parts went together beautifully. The suspensions for the road wheels are beautifully detailed. There are 3 types of suspension assemblies that need to be put together, one each of A and B, and 4 sets of C type, which is a double suspension. The instructions suggest that we do not glue in the road wheels. I don't really get that. I can understand that the drive sprocket and the return idler may be kept free for track adjustment later on, but surely the road wheels can be glued in place. And after a while, I do in fact glue in all the road wheels, making the gluing of the suspension much easier. Lastly, there is the jockey wheel that needs to be assembled. Next, I glue in all the wheels and the sprocket and idler to the hull. The sprocket and idler are just slotted in place without any glue. It's time to glue on the suspension cover. Before we can glue in the upper hull, we need to drill in several holes. I start attaching the hull parts now. These covers go in first. Just a word of caution, these covers look similar, but they are not. Each has a specific place to go, so just be careful with that. As I keep working on the hull, I do not glue some of the parts. These are parts that I need to paint differently later on, like the tools. And also parts that I may find difficult to handle while masking for paint. The color scheme I have chosen is rather complicated, and I don't want to make the task any more difficult by gluing on hard to mask parts. I just keep a tab of parts that I have to paint separately and glue in later. Hopefully this will result in a cleanup paint job, even if it takes a little longer to do. The upper and lower hulls are now glued in. A very nice fit, really nice. I think I botched up the extra fuel tank by sanding a bit too vigorously to get rid of the tab marks. And I am now left with this gap. Not an issue, it's nothing that a bit of puttying and sanding won't fix. Onto the exhaust assembly. While putting the exhaust together, just be careful about how the inlet and outlet pipes are aligned. The pipes themselves are much easier to glue in than one might think. And now the turret. I have already glued in the 2-pounder assembly. Now these poly caps go into the sides and the gun is glued to the turret. I have cut and cleaned the side armor skirts. But once again, I will not be gluing these onto the kit, as they may make masking the kit very difficult. Well, fellow model makers, I guess that does it for the kit assembly. Looks real good so far. That's it for this time. I hope you enjoyed the video. Do subscribe and like. Next time, we will take on painting the kit. Till then, good luck and happy modeling.